Hello again, this is Professor Luchin, and this is Lecture 9. What's interesting is Lecture 9 is really going to be a sort of a build-up from the previous lectures, because ultimately everything we've kind of talked about is supposed to go into the development of the written safety program. So I'm going to share with you some basic documents, but a lot of it's been really covered. This is sort of a tie everything together. I would like you to finish off the textbook after this lecture. That's chapters 13 through 15, the Oakley textbook. Again, in there, they're kind of wrapping it up as well, so I thought this would be a good time to bring it all together. As you'll recall, and I believe this was lecture 1, I talked about the ANSI standard, Z590, which identified the duties of the safety professional, or the functions of the safety professional. As you recall, it was, and we spent time talking about this, anticipate, identify, evaluate hazardous conditions and practices, develop control strategies, implement those control strategies, develop a program, and then finally measure and evaluate the effectiveness. So let's get into it. So first of all, I believe in lecture 1, but it says chapter 6, so it must have been later as well. We talked about the analytical process. The goal is to find out the causes, and including the systemic or the work system issues. There's different levels of accountability. Each organization really designates it by who the safety professional reports to. And by being analytical, it tries to remove some of the biases or the lens that we naturally have when we see things, and you try to take a more objective approach to evaluating facts versus how you feel. In chapter 4, continued with this and what do you do to investigate accidents. The first, on the bottom, I'm just going to talk about the bottom figure, and that is the biggest step is to define the problem. What are you really searching for? If you're just trying to find out, what happened, that's pretty easy to find out. What happened? Oh, it's what we put in the OSHA log. But what we want to find out is how it happened. If you recall from things I've talked about in previous lectures, such as root cause analysis and kind of the 5 why, it's to get to how did this really happen. It was not what was intended. And by trying to study and find out what led to the negative outcome, the accident, the injury, whatever it might be, the near miss, we now have a better understanding of what we can do to prevent it from happening again. And that's what safety is all about. Attempting to prevent things, but when they do happen, understand how it happened, and to be analytical, to be systematic, to be non-biased, to get to the root cause, to really fix more of the job and wider, and not try to blame the person and fix the person. Yeah, the ultimate purpose of conducting accident investigation is to prevent it from happening again. Very good. Documentation is as important part of the process. I've talked about that before. Document everything. And I've got some interesting stuff over here on the right, such as the hierarchy of controls. We'd like to eliminate. If we eliminate something we find, it's not going to be a problem anymore. It doesn't have to be part of the safety program. But anything where there is still a source that could be tapped into, whether it's guarded and a guard could be removed, people are trained to work around, or the use of PPE, the issue is still there. So an exposure could still happen. And that's what we have to try and mitigate then with a combination of approaches. Yeah. Corrective actions. So I use the work system model, and I'm going to actually bring that up later because it is such a profound part of my approach that if you were to remove the person who was injured and put in a new person, would they act the same way? Brought that up, I think, in last lecture. And if that is true, then we really need to look beyond the person, to look at the organization, the environment, the tasks, the technology, how those things manipulate each other, and then ultimately how it leads to the worker's perception of what needs to get done, and whether they get exposed to a hazard or not. All right. So that's the review building up to this. And there could have been more. I probably could have gone for a long time trying to give you the benefit. And that is, what does a program look like? And you may think it's a bunch of books or a bunch of binders. But how effective is something just that's in a binder or a book or a PowerPoint? It's not. The safety program is what you see out on the work floor. what the workers are doing, what they think it is. That's what a safety program is. Now, we are required to document everything. One, it's a good idea, but OSHA wants to review what sort of programs you have in place. So you document your assessments. You document your analysis of what you collect. You document what you presented to management and what mitigation strategies they agreed to. You document that you've trained people and explained to them what those issues are and how you're controlling their exposure to it. And it should be more integrated into the job and not be something that's an add-on. And then over time, you attempt new techniques to analyze, to better understand how the work is done. And by working, collaborating with workers, see it from their point of view. Collaborating with supervisors, again, they need specialized training so they can see it the way you see it. Educating management on what is the right thing to do as far as commitment and responsibility and accountability. This takes time. It's iterative over time that you change things, you trial and error and figure it out. With that basic, I want to learn what we can do to do things better, that will get you to an effective safety program. It may take time, and it's going to take time, and there's going to be some failures in what you're trying out, but you have to just keep moving forward iteratively. I have a question beneath the worried eyes. Can you purchase a safety program? No. Oh, I should say you can, but it's not real. One time, and this was a very distinct memory of mine, I was on an OSHA inspection, and during the opening conference, I said, could I see your, and it may have been your hazard communication program, which we called Right to Know. And the safety director, all proud, takes his binder off the shelf, sets it in front of me. It was still in the shrink wrap in which he had purchased it. I said, okay. He goes, oh, I'm sorry. And he took off the shrink wrap, opened it up, and nothing was customized. Nothing was site-specific. It was just rehashing out what the standard said. That's not a safety program. That's just a simplified and oversimplified rereading of the standards. That's not what a safety program is. You're supposed to take what you have, compare it to what's in the standards, bring those two together into something that workers can use and supervisors can use. I asked for the respiratory protection program. He did the same thing, but he took it off the shelf, took off the plastic before he handed it to me. Opened it up. There was things that he was supposed to do, things he was supposed to fill in order to make it their safety program, but still it wouldn't be. It's just a document that has some of their site information on it. It's not part of the work. It's something that's in addition to. It's like telling workers, you're going to be exposed to things that could cut you, pull muscles, break bones, get stuff in your eye, stuff into your lungs. Look out for it and avoid it. Is that a safety program? Because that's exactly what this person was trying to give me. So you shouldn't buy it. You build it. And it starts with assessments and then trying to control those exposures. And the things you can't eliminate, that becomes part of your safety program. And like I had said here, people have asked me dozens, I don't want to say hundreds, but dozens of times, oh, could you take a look at this program? And if it reads just like they were just reciting the OSHA standard, they don't understand what it means. It starts with the assessment. Hey, we've got a hearing conservation program. Let me see your noise sampling to prove that what you're selecting is correct. And in the next lecture, we're going to talk about personal protective equipment assessments. If you're going to have people wear gloves, why? Are they the right type of gloves? Are they protecting against the hazard that you assessed? A lot of people don't do that. They just, I don't know, let's protect the hands. Here's leather gloves. Or let's protect the eyes. Here's some glasses. Let's protect their ears or the hearing. Here, just wear some earplugs. No, that's not what you do. You're just making stuff up. It looks good, it may feel right, but it's not right. And I'll get into that. And as we go through this course, when we go through the different standards, I'm going to try to always call attention to understanding how you go and identify what the issues are, how you use the standard to determine what would be an acceptable alternative, correction, mitigation strategy, whatever it might be, to try and protect workers. Again, at the bottom, I'm going to reiterate that the program is what you see on the floor, what the workers tell you it is. It's not what you have written down, though you need to write things down. I also want to just say that, especially when it comes to training, Workers don't need to be trained on everything that you have documented, the assessments, what it means, compare it. Just tell them what they need to know. No more, no less. And it should be customized to what they're doing. You don't have, the people who are working in the warehouse information about lockout, tagout for machines that they'll never ever see. Just give the people what they need for their job and make it hands-on and applied. Don't make them sit in a cafeteria jamming donuts and coffee down their gullets so they stay somewhat coherent, and then you're just reading in the standards. That's not safety training. That's not going to do anything. It should be customized to what they do and be as integrated into the work so it's as seamless to the work as possible. I have a lot of stuff here. What I went through and I colored red and underlined in red the most important things. Minimize risk of injury and exposures. It begins with visual audits. If a risk or hazard cannot be eliminated, it becomes part of the program. Communicate regularly and effectively with workers and supervisors. Prepare for accidents and injuries to ensure a rapid response and care. Make cost-justified recommendations to management. Continuously assess the work system using new perspectives, tools, techniques, and metrics to discover issues and resolve them. But if you read the whole thing, it sounds a little bit more colorful. A lot of what I've been sharing with you that OSHA has on what are the characteristics of a successful safety program came from a series of three papers that were studies. Actually, it was different versions of a similar study by some NIOSH researchers. And the one I like to refer to was the one that was published in 1978. I believe it was the second of the three. The other two were bigger reports. This one was more consumable format, in which the authors, the researchers from NIOSH, they got paired companies. And this is how they paired them. So they did the same sort of work, similar region, similar size. One had a very high accident rate, so high injury rate. One had a very low. And so what they did is they went in and did audits and talked to people and evaluated their programs and tried to define characteristics that were more common with the low injury, low accident sites. And here's a sort of a short list of what they came up with. Greater management commitment, more humanistic approach to dealing with employees, better employee selection procedures, more frequent use of lead workers, much greater degree of housekeeping or cleanliness, better plant environmental qualities, low turnover absenteeism, better workforce stability. This basic 7 has been, kind of promulgated through a lot of the things that OSHA does. I was first introduced to it in a 1989 document that OSHA had created, and it was mostly based off of the work of Smith, Cohen in Cleveland. Incidentally, my graduate school mentor, my advisor, was Dr. Smith. And so I got to hear from the person who was an integral part of this research. And so I got to find things out that maybe aren't in those papers, such as the number 5. Yeah, I know grater is spelt wrong. It's not cheese grater. Degree of housekeeping and cleanliness. So there are programs built around the idea of cleanliness and orderliness. That's 5S programs. And but I asked, Dr. Smith, I said, now, is it really when companies have workers clean things up and keep things organized, things are safer? Or is it that the workers have more pride and control of their work environment, therefore they keep it more organized and clean? He goes, oh no, it's what you just said, the latter of the two. I said, that's not what people are saying out in the world. He's like, oh, well, that's their deal. So what I see here, as far as they're applying it to safety, but the things that we're kind of reading here, I believe, and I've learned, and I've seen, and I've researched, and I've published, it's about developing fair relationships with workers, supervisors, and management, all understanding their own individual roles, in this big, plan to provide a service or a product or whatever it is, and supporting each other so that everybody can do the job that they're asked to do, and hopefully they can elicit some satisfaction from what they do, some pride, and hopefully they can do it in a way that minimizes their exposure to hazards and risks of getting hurt. That's what it really comes down to. Safety is something that comes later. Actually, I think it's an attribute of work. It's not the primary. It's the relationship and communication that is primary. And if you've ever had a job, I think you can recognize what I had just said and relate to it. So this is something that you'd see more from OSHA. It's somewhat similar to a document we had gone through, the elements of a successful safety program, but management commitment, employee participation or involvement, hazard identification, hazard elimination, employee training and education, program evaluation, and I believe the seventh in that lecture was communication with contractors. I added medical management, work comp management, employee assistance program, return to work programs. That is what's going to save the company the most amount of money, and it's the probably likely the more technical or easy to pursue than these other things, because some of these other things are more of a trial and error. So, like I said, in 1989, they had published this management guidelines, and it was the basis for an audit rubric that I was trained to use, and that was for a Minnesota program that was attempting to evaluate like the best of the best companies. OSHA has a VPP, and I've got it here near the bottom. They were going to have an I2P2 program, which California does have. That was in 91, and OSHA had an AWARE program. So the best of the best have these characteristics. As compliance officers, we were going on and evaluating what it looked like at these companies. But here was the issue. The rubric we were given allowed management to comment on their commitment and workers to comment on their engagement. And it really should be the other way around. Management should be speaking to how workers are being engaged, how frequently, what it looks like. Workers should be defining what management commitment is. And so there's sort of they were measuring the wrong side of the right thing, I guess is what you could say. We performed the audits, we reviewed the programs, but then they used incidence rates as the performance measure. And I had already talked about how there's issues with the calculation has both risky and non-risky hours in the denominator. And so it really washes out or dilutes what's really going on. Whereas I showed you the results of my work in which I broke it down by job title. And the data told me to do that. The data guided me. I didn't guide it. So Cal OSHA, they have the I2P2, and you can go to their website and read a little bit about it. They provide some success stories on how it works. Theirs has more elements than what I had just shared with you. And it's difficult to do safety in California because Cal OSHA has a much higher expectation than the federal level. This model you see here defines how an organizational culture can go bad or it can improve. And I simplified it based on my experiences. So right at the top, management observes the workplace, makes assumptions, and they're making decisions strategically for the company. What direction is the company going? Trying to understand what the marketplace is or the turbulence in the marketplace so that the company can succeed or grow. Management then sets policies, work rules, plans in order for what the workers need to do or the workplace needs to do in order to fulfill those strategic goals. The thing is, the language they use and how they define things don't always translate well to the tactical level, the work level. So that requires supervisors and workers to try and interpret it to their environment, to their particular roles. And sometimes it's incongruent or it doesn't complement. Therefore, they're kind of making guesses. And so they attempt to understand it. They change their behaviors or their perceived expectations. Now, if it doesn't match what management wants, do you think they go back and go, "Oh, I'm sorry, did you misunderstand me?" No. They blame, and then they either use punishment or take it a different way. And so that's where things can go bad. The role of the safety professional is to go out and try to understand it from the workers' and supervisors' perspective, help them with, help work with them to understand how it applies to their work and how it applies to safety, then educate management on how the message that they're sending is affecting the workers, affecting the work itself. And we can usually attach dollar values to it to help convince them. So I have 7 principles in which I operate. Practice safety, my craft. And that is, number 1, safety is an attribute of work. I study it from the work perspective. I went back to graduate school to study industrial engineering and human factors and organizational design and management. And what I found is you can do a job safely and you can do a job unsafely. Both can get the job done, but one of them puts the worker at risk. The more that safety is actually just part of the task itself. And I don't know if you had, if you had me for 380, we talked about the Industrial Revolution. That explains how safety got removed from the job, because craftsmen, it was designed into their training. When you bring in unskilled people or a particular skill into a work environment, an organization, they have to bring it with them or try to understand it within this new environment. It doesn't always work. So here's my work system model, why I always look past the worker and try not to blame the worker. Because there are systems deficiencies that I can evaluate that led to the person, whoever's there. It doesn't have to be the injured person, it's somebody else. If they would make the same decision or exhibit the same behavior, due to the influences, they would get hurt too. So I got to go back and figure out where in the system it's causing it. Even though there are a plethora of videos and pictures on the internet, workers do not want to get hurt. It's not their goal. It's not their objective. They're trying to get the job done. And when safety is incongruent to getting the job done, do they choose to try to figure it out to do safely, or they just try to get the job done? Because that's what they're hired to do. So they have a better idea of what the job looks like when it needs to get done versus what it looks like to do it safely to get it done. That's the responsibility of management and the safety professional. Everybody wants to be treated fairly, and when that assumption is violated, we get upset and we react. And so when I go into a work environment and I can see that management and labor are not getting along, it's likely because the workers feel they've been treated unjustly. And to compensate for that, it's become almost like a confrontational environment. Organizations are as unique as individuals. I say that because you can't take what this company did to be successful in safety and just stick it over here. It has to be earned. It has to be developed. And that's why I don't like when when there are presentations by, this company, they figured it out. They've got a great safety program. They talk about, this is what we're doing. That's great. But from where I am, I don't know how to get there. I see what it looks like, but I don't know how to get there. Isn't that like a lot of our problem when, you have somebody speaking, it's like they just don't understand the way it was, or they don't start the story from how it was. They only speak to when it's successful now. And it's difficult to learn. It's difficult to understand it from that perspective. Every worker needs to be successful, and that's where safety is an attribute of work. I try to design the work so they can be successful, hopefully elicit some satisfaction from it, and do it safely. Choose to at least acknowledge or apply safety to what they do. And that's why I don't like to use the term safety culture. I like to use the term learning culture, and I like to take more of a servant leadership approach. Now, when you're a servant leader, you're not, walking around with the crown and the staff and people are bowing to you. If you want that, this isn't for you. But instead of, saying, here are the rules and then make sure people follow the rules, you see something that's not right or the way it should be done, and you go up and you help. Someone's not wearing eye protection, you bring it to them and you remind them the importance of it. Someone's trying to lift something unsafely, you go give them a hand and find out, how should this be done? Do you have ideas? And what it does is, it develops more of a trusting, fair relationship between management and workers, but it also sometimes motivates workers to share ideas and figure out better ways to do things. And a quote from a paper that I had published in 2012, organizational and social issues need to be understood before sustainable change can occur. And that's what I mean by safety. Back in, I think it was 2009, I was asked to head up all of the safety professionals for a recording of the TV show Extreme Makeover Home Edition. It was up just south of Duluth. And it was summertime, so and a lot of people had recommended, find out if Lucien can do it. And I said, sure. And then I'm like, how am I going to do this? And so I was able to assemble a team of safety professionals to work 24/7. It was 8-hour shifts. I made sure there was at least 2 people every shift, and one of them had to be a certified safety professional. We took a servant leadership approach. We weren't going to punish people. We weren't going to yell at people. We weren't going to write people up. We were going to help everybody we could. And through helping, we'd be educating. But the biggest trick was trying to protect the unskilled labor. So the people are like, oh, TV camera, I want to get on TV. I'm going to become famous. Those were the people I was most worried about because they didn't know how to swing a hammer or drill a screw. That was concerning to me. And so we created an orientation program, and an unskilled person had to be matched with a skilled person. And they were only there to maybe like hold something and stand in a certain place. And so we didn't want to have them doing anything dangerous, using tools or that. They were just kind of being there to be helpful, It's like when your kids are helping you build the deck, they hold a screw and they hand you one. That's about all we want them to do. But after 7 long days, they provided the family with this really cool energy efficient house that you see on the bottom right. I don't know who the cowboy is. I can't remember. I was kind of scraping these pictures together. But it was a rewarding experience. I got to watch the show when it was aired. I received no recognition because I was just a volunteer. And they didn't name a lot of the volunteers. The names on the credits went to, the stars, the host, the family, and a few of the key individuals. Mostly it was a television production set and not a construction site. And that was an interesting part. But it was a very rewarding experience. But by taking this servant leadership approach, people were safe. There was one person who cut their hand, and it wasn't severe. So what I'd like to do, I'm sorry we're almost at 30 minutes, is I want to quickly show you some other things I've done for people. And I was going to show you like 5 of them, but I'm just going to show you a couple of them. So, a few years ago, this company asked me for some help. A lot of companies asked me for mock OSHA audits. They want to know what would happen if OSHA was to come through. So that's kind of a nice pet skill to have. And then I usually am able to turn those into student projects. Obviously right now, if we didn't have the pandemic and everything, I'd probably have a project for everybody to work on. But I'm just going to try to share with you what past students have done. So I try to be very specific with details. When I'm on site, what I do when I'm on site, provide full description of everything, including the calculation of incidence rates, if they have the records. I review their written programs, what they have, what it says. Here's my injury record stuff, kind of trending a few things, see what's going on. And then I start getting into the results of my walk around. See, I take pictures and then I provide actual citations from the OSHA standards on what I'm seeing. And I try to make it really clear what the issues are. So here's what the standard says, here's what the pictures say, this is what the concern is. And I happen to see certain things like this piece of wood kind of slipped off of the stack and fell, and this is the guy who almost got hit. It just missed him. Would he have been out of work? No, but it would have smacked him in the head pretty hard if he was in the right position. Finding other things that are wrong. See, this is a broken latch, but this guy's standing right underneath it. If that was to somehow jog while it's being moved laterally, it would crush him, seriously injure him. Talked a little bit about fall protection, working at heights. This is their first aid kit. They've got oxygen tank that's almost empty. Yikes. LP storage with no signage. Overhead storage. These things could fall off. And when you have overhead storage like this, you have to indicate the floor capacity, how much it can hold, pounds per square inch. A blocked E-panel. When these E-panels are blocked, people aren't going to lock out, tag out, or if something goes wrong, they can't get to it. There's bad placement of materials. Using extension cords. Got to plug those things directly into the wall. Using a plastic gas can right next to combustible materials. It's supposed to be a safety can. Isn't it interesting that some of the things that we had covered in the week 1 discussions came up here? Hazard communication, there is none. You can see there's a mess here. It was loud, and so I brought my students in to do full shift sampling for noise. They had a homemade dust collection system, which I found errors in that they didn't know about, and so they got to repair those. You can't see this, but this is an upcut saw, and the blade comes up from the table and makes the cut once you hit the foot actuator. It comes less than an inch away from this person's fingers. And I'm like, that's got to be guarded. Like, well, this is the way it came. I said, I don't care. Something has to be designated. And I found videos of guards they can put in place that keep people's hands away. And they're like, well, it's never happened before. You talk to 3 of the workers, and yeah, it almost happened, or it just would like nick someone's finger. It's kind of scary. Here's another version of it. You can see, so the blade comes right out of this table right here. Person's hand could be right in there. There was issues, no unguarded table saw. Here's a radial arm saw, and while it's running, they're able to turn it, and the guy almost hit his fingers. So yeah, saw blades were a big issue. Provided them with some different options, some flexible guarding options. Talked about the summary, what I saw, what I was concerned about, and that was really it. So this was the presentation I gave in order to get students to come in and do projects. Another one I did, and I'm sorry we're past 30 minutes here, is they wanted a mock OSHA audit. I've actually got some video to share with you later in the semester when we get to the topic. See, I've got kind of the summary of what everything came up. Tried to let them know things have to be in writing. Because there were no record keeping, no work comp records. Yeah, what they had in writing actually would have gotten them in trouble. Kind of violated some of the employees' rights. That's all I'm going to say about it. I pointed out what was missing. Like, safety glasses must be worn, but there was no assessment to determine what type or training would be needed. Personal safety, depending on the hazard, use your PPE, but there's no JHA. These would all be cited. If you're going to make people wear safety devices, you got to explain why. Said how I collected things, referred to the field operations manual, used an Excel sheet, talked about photos. So we had another upcut saw that wasn't guarded properly. The clamper robot, this guy uses a stick to activate it. Why not just move the control panel here? It wouldn't take much for an electrician to do that. But by having it here, there were different places where a worker could possibly be struck and crushed. And that needed to be fixed. We did noise sampling for this site as well. Actually found them to be over. And I found, here's the thing, and I'll show you videos later on, is that workers had an earbud in one ear and then had the other one hanging down and they're working, and the environmental noise levels were high enough to cause hearing loss. But of course, the one that's in the ear is going to be so much higher, so they can hear it over the environmental noise. So my recommendation came to be noise canceling headphones that were equipped with Bluetooth so they could connect it to their phones, still listen to their music, but achieve the noise reduction that they needed to protect their hearing. These devices, depending on the quantity you bought them, was anywhere from $25 to $35 a piece. well worth it when one citation would probably be about 13 grand. Wood dust is an issue. If it's if the depth of the dust is equal to or more than the width of a dime, which I have in the picture in the middle, that's a violation. Forklift battery charging, anchoring of certain types of equipment, wood dust and chemicals. This was a refrigerator that had contaminants in it. They do need the JHAs. This, I mean, I should probably bring this back for the next lecture. Next lecture, this is exactly what we're going to be talking about. So they had nothing on HAZCOM. HAZCOM will be covered in Module 6 for this class. We're actually going to talk about first aid and disease prevention and COVID in Lecture 11, which is the first one next week. I wanted to get it out because it's such a hot topic. They didn't have any certification or training for forklift operators, no record keeping. Overhead space had issues, and here's a summary of the citations and how I calculated the gravity-based amounts and applied their reductions. And then I assigned abatement periods. So this is very much just like a mock OSHA audit. I did it down to the T and followed all of the protocols and guidelines set forth by OSHA down to, what the gravity-based total was and what the adjusted penalty was. We came back and did assessments with students, so it cost them nothing. All they had to do was decide how they wanted to implement it. And I tried to find them the most cost-effective ways to protect the workers and to get into OSHA compliance. So that's all I wanted to cover. I shared 2 examples here. I've got others to share with you throughout the semester. It's interesting that I didn't notice when I put this up that I've got the PPE JHAs. That's going to be the next lecture. So I'll get into that more, probably bring this back. But if you do have any questions or want to meet with me, please let me know, because we can set up a time for WebEx. I can go over some of this stuff. I owe you a keyword, don't I? Let's go with keyword Extreme Makeover Home Edition. All right, thank you.